Hello and welcome to the Championship Talk podcast. I'm your host Paul O'Toole and joined maybe that way, it's my co-host Thomas Falco.
Hello.
So we've got some great fixtures to talk about, but first of all we're going to talk about the news. And unfortunately, Game 4, we're already going to be talking around crowd violence. We're going to be talking about booing taking the knee, and then we're going to be talking about racist abuse towards players. All happened in week 4. So I'm going to start with Millwall and what seemed to be in the second half of their game against Cardiff. Millwall were the away team. There seemed to be a fight that broke out between Millwall fans, between each other, that had to involve police and stewards. It's unsure about what started the incident, and it's unsure about how many people, whether anyone was arrested. However, there was clearly unsavoury scenes in the Millwall end. I think it's now got to a point where they're even fighting each other, and shows how probably little some of these people go to football games to actually watch football. The sickening part of this, and it's really frustrating, is it also is Game 4, pandemic over. Yay, we get to see football again, and we're already talking about unsavoury scenes. And it's not just Millwall, and it's not just in England either. There was unsavoury scenes abroad. And it's just crazy to think that people don't get this outlet. They don't get to watch football for well over a year. 4 games into the season, we're talking about this.
Yeah, and it's week on week, isn't it? And as you've said, the words out of my mouth, is extremely frustrating. It shouldn't be happening. We said off air that, of course, we're getting more and more used to the idea that players and indeed clubs choose not to take the knee for their own reasons. It doesn't automatically make them against equality in football. They just feel there's a more proactive way of maybe being making their voices heard and sort of championing the cause more. But I just don't see where we get.
Yeah, because obviously when we talk about taking the knee, obviously Millwall. The Millwall fans booed the taking of the knee by the Cardiff City players, and this obviously comes off the back of last week. Gary Rowett made comments that he believes taking the knee is causing a rift. His comments weren't particularly eloquent, I think is the probably the best way to phrase it. He definitely seemed to be. The Millwall fans have been booing the taking the knee by other clubs, simple as that. And again, if you're against a gesture that is there to raise awareness of equality, regardless of whatever deluded views you may have around the political leanings behind the gesture, it's a gesture there to raise awareness of inequality in football. And you said it when we recorded, and we had an issue with the audio. Some players choose not to take the knee, but they don't stand there and boo the player next to them because they've chosen not to take the knee. It's crazy.
Of course not. And this doesn't compare, but I've never also got the fans who boo the national anthems as well in sort of international fixtures as well. I think that's extremely disrespectful. I'm not linking the two and comparing them. I'm just sort of saying that is another thing.
I'm linking the two to a certain level of IQ, and I don't think it's particularly high.
No, but I think... and
I just think it's just ridiculous. We're Game 4. It's Game 4.
Yeah, I think it's important to say as well, but it isn't just Millwall fans. You can't put every single Millwall fan into that. There is a portion of the Millwall sort of crowd who chose to boo that, and I think that's been addressed, and the comments made by Gary Rowett have been addressed and discussed at length by pundits who are more articulate than we ever sort of will be. I think unfortunately we're going to be talking about it again next week, aren't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely we are. And let's a subject can get repetitive and be frustrating. If you stop talking about it, you accept it. And I think that this is the thing that this is the whole point of making a gesture at the start of each football game. Is if you accept something, if you accept that there's no point in trying to improve a situation, then you are accepting that you're never going to make a change and change people's. You're not trying to necessarily change people's behaviour, but you're trying to raise awareness of something that is a serious problem, an ongoing problem, a problem that, as I said, was it last week? As a species, humans are now leaving the planet for holidays. You can now book a ticket on a spaceship and leave the planet. So think of how enlightened as a species we've had to come. Think of how our intelligence has had to grow from caveman days. And we still have a problem where people are judged for the colour of their skin, for the way they choose to live their lives. And you still have people that think it's okay to make fun of people, to abuse people just for a laugh, or just because you're trying to elicit a reaction. And if we've still got people in society that believe that's okay, then that is wrong, and that is why you need to have something. Where, taking the knee, does it do anything? No, in essence, no, it doesn't. But what it does is it means we're talking about it every week to try and increase people's knowledge and people's understanding of the way not to behave. Now we're linking the two because the two happen in the same game: booing, taking a knee, and fan violence. Let's be perfectly honest. The people that are doing both things, it's not just Millwall, because we were talking about the Ligue 1 game between Marseille and Nice. That game had to be abandoned because objects were being thrown at players, hit a player, the player threw the object back. That game, there was a pitch invasion. Go check out the scenes, because it's just unreal to think that could happen and a game could then be abandoned. Where you look at some of the players on show in Ligue 1 now, and some of the money that is on show in Ligue 1, the profile of that league has never been higher. The worst thing that league needed was to see scenes like that. Fans were not allowed in stadiums last year. This is the first time they've come back, and it seems to be the imbeciles are the first in the stadium. And that's crazy. And the thing is that's really frustrating, because we've seen some amazing football in the last 4 weeks, and we've reaped the benefit of having fans in a stadium and how difference it makes to the atmosphere, the level of play on the field, the watchability at home. And it's just another level watching football with fans in the stadium. The problem is when you get scenes like we saw at Millwall, like we see at Nice, booing the taking the knee. And then I'm going to move on to police investigating an alleged racist hate crime during Blackpool's game with Coventry. The alleged incident, and I use the word alleged, which Coventry City personnel reported hearing from an individual in the West Stand, occurred around the 69th minute. Lancashire police have said the force has taken the hate crime very seriously and the behaviour will not be tolerated, and they're working with both clubs to identify the perpetrator. We're in a situation where people think it's okay to yell and to abuse people, and that just tarnishes what can and is 90% of the time a really enjoyable 90 minutes. But it just highlights the stupidity of the imbeciles that feel it's okay to behave this way and use football and use that crowd herd mentality. And it just means that every time something like this happens, we have to talk about it. We have to highlight it, because otherwise you shine a spotlight so bright, these imbeciles have got nowhere to hide. And I think that's the only way to stop this. And I know that it becomes frustrating to keep talking about it, and probably it's frustrating to hear about it, but it is, unfortunately, something that we have to talk about. Am I making sense, or am I just rambling like a crazy person?
Yeah,
I'm rambling like a crazy person.
I'll be very political and not expand on that. But it's incredibly frustrating that it's happening. It doesn't matter. I was going to say it is in isolated incidences, but it doesn't matter. It's in isolated incidences because it shouldn't be happening at all, and that is the frustrating part, isn't it? It doesn't matter which club is involved. It's happening, and it's just not on. As you said, we're in 2021, and it shouldn't have happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It shouldn't be happening today. It's just no.
It is crazy. It is absolutely crazy, because when you think of, like, think of where the world is right now, and think of the benefits that technology has had, social media, global travel. Obviously, in a pandemic, that is a little bit curtailed. And think about where as a human race we're going to be in 10 years. If in 10 years, 15 years, we'll have people on Mars. For those wealthy enough, you can buy a ticket to go into space. We're leaving the planet, and all that'll happen is the best and brightest will leave the planet and leave the imbeciles to yell the racist abuse at each other, because it's beyond a joke that 4 games in. I think that's the bit that really frustrated me. The fact that this season has started so well. It's been so great to have fans come in, and we're talking about this, and it's for the second week running, four games into the season. It's just ridiculous. You've got some transfer news. I know it's really, really weird segue, but you've got some transfer news. There's a couple of big transfers that have happened this week that we definitely need to talk about. One close to my heart is Aaron Ramsdale going to Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to round up the transfers when we get to the audio part, because then you can't see me reading directly from my tablet. But yeah, Aaron Ramsdale has left Sheffield United to go to Arsenal. You can tell me what the fee was, because I don't have it in front of me. Was it 30 million? I don't think that was 30 million, was it?
It's 22 rising to 30, depending on if he becomes like number one, appearances, etc. And based the way Arsenal are playing, anyone could be our number one. You even with your broken finger, you could do a stint between the sticks at Arsenal right now.
But Aaron Ramsdale, when you break it down, although he is a Championship player, he's only played 2 games at Championship level, because the rest of the time he's been with Sheffield United in League One. Then he joined Bournemouth in the Premier League, Chesterfield and Wimbledon on loan, and then back to Sheffield United. I think cold light today, I actually said it to you when we played 5-a-side on Thursday. He's actually gone down with the last 2 clubs he's played with, so hopefully it's not third time in a row when now he's at Arsenal. But yeah, the very
Can
best.
you just imagine Arsenal get relegated, we cover the Championship, but in the same season Forest get relegated as well? that would be a disaster.
Not beyond the realms of possibility. But moving on, so yeah, it is a shame to lose an international calibre player. Well, I've never really rated him too highly personally, but then who am I? But he's only played 2 games in the Championship, so his loss wouldn't be as felt as much as this one. I want to move on to Arnaud Danjuma of Brentford, and of Bournemouth. Even shows how much I'm an expert. He left to join Villarreal for a reported fee of 25 million euros. I'm just looking here that Bournemouth paid 13.7 million for him when he joined in 2019. He played 15 times in their season in the Premier League, didn't score a single goal, played 33 games in the Championship last season, scored 15 goals, 37 appearances, 17 goals in all competitions for the Cherries last season, and was their player of the season. We talked about him a lot last season, and it is a shame that we won't be talking about him anymore for the foreseeable future, because he is a quality player, and we don't like seeing players of that calibre leave our league. But he's gone on to play in La Liga, and I believe Villarreal. But they've been playing. Yeah, they play. Were they the team who lost against Chelsea in the Super Cup? Villarreal.
Yes, managed by Unai.
Oh, okay. So yes, so he will be playing European football, won't he? I would imagine. So
and Bournemouth then recruited really expensive, not expensive, he was on a free, a really experienced centre-back in Gary Cahill.
Yes, he's at the advanced stage of his career, but all that Premiership experience with, I believe he was with Bolton initially, is that where he made his name? Then Chelsea,
then
Chelsea. Crystal Palace for the last season or 2. Bit of a coup for Bournemouth, really, on a free. He's probably on... I would imagine he's one of their highest wage earners, but a little bit of experience in that Bournemouth back
which is
four.
Needed, because at the weekend they fielded the youngest team in the league, so definitely they needed a bit of experience. And we'll get onto the games in a bit, but when you get to their defending, they definitely needed someone that could defend crosses as a minimum. Surprised he didn't go to Derby and make a back three that's like older than time itself. Phil Jagielka, Curtis Davis, and Gary Cahill. I actually do think their combined ages would be in the 90s, but you can't put a price on the experience. So good signing, I think, for Bournemouth. So that concludes today's podcast. As always, if you want to check out the audio portion of our podcast, where we review every game, we've got 2 rounds of fixtures to go through. We're also going to round up the Championship transfers that we haven't covered so far. Game of the day, goal of the day, shock of the day. We're going to be previewing the weekend's fixtures ahead, and we'll be running down the table and pointing out that Nottingham Forest are dead last, lost all 4 games, and are pointless.
They are pointless in more ways than one. Yes.
As are Arsenal in the Premier League, but we won't go there. We'll stick them in the Championship, which I'm quite grateful for. So, thank you all for watching. And as always, if you do want to support the podcast, hit us a thumbs up. That would be really appreciated. Anything you want us to cover or not cover, please do leave us a comment down below. We do really appreciate all the comments we've had. We've probably had more interaction so far this year than we had last year. And I think that just really does give us some motivation to keep following the Championship. Not that we really need one, because it's just such a more engrossing league than most others. Probably all others, actually. So, as always, we shall see you next week. Bye from me.
Bye from me.